Colorado is going to war with one SEC program for a 5-star quarterback, and I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about where they stand.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Buffs. I am your host, Kevin Borba. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. We are also brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Who doesn't love free things? And who doesn't love the legendary Zac Blackerby? Zac is the host of Locked On Auburn, and he is who we're going to war with. So grab your pitchforks, grab your torches, and let's head on down to Auburn because it's Colorado versus Auburn, a historic rivalry, as we all know. But realistically, Zac, you know it, I know it. Colorado and Auburn are duking it out for one Mr. Julian Lewis, and it is one recruitment that's going to be quite interesting down the stretch, I would say.
Yeah, and it's funny. You and I had a conversation earlier this week, and things have already changed with everything going on with Juju Lewis. Yeah, I mean, clearly Colorado pulled out everything they possibly could at Juju, and it seemed like it was effective. At least the national media seems to think so. And then, like, the overall vibe from the Auburn point of view in this is, okay, something doesn't really feel right. And while these things that happened eventually this week weren't technically Juju Lewis, his teammate at Carleton, he Arnaud is his last name. He committed to USC. And then Carday Smith, who's an offensive tackle that's been committed to Auburn for a few months, he takes an official visit to USC. He decommits. And it all kind of seems to be revolving around, you said it, Juju Lewis.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, and these recruits, they know what they're doing. They like to troll avidly. And so he was at that 5-star Rivals event sporting a Colorado towel. So, of course, Colorado fans are like, okay, here, we're back.
Throwing an Auburn football, by the way.
Right. That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
So he had both of us in the mix there. When I look at this recruitment, I think it's two very different stages for both programs. I think Auburn is more set up at the quarterback spot. You guys brought in, I don't want to say you guys are solidified there, but you have more options. You have guys that have played a little bit. Colorado, in a way, feels like it's Julian Lewis or bust in a sense, because obviously Shedeur Sanders is going to the NFL, probably going to be a top 10-ish pick. And then it's like, okay, who's after him? Are they going to try to flip the guy from Nebraska, TJ Lateef? They've been eyeing him. Are they going to try to go into the transfer portal again and bring in another transfer quarterback? Because every year there's a big market. What do you think a miss for Auburn does on Julian Lewis when it comes to Julian Lewis? Excuse me.
I'm sure they're already having the discussion, or have probably had this discussion weeks ago. It's like, okay, if this doesn't work, we're all in on Juju, but if it doesn't work, what do we do? And there's a few guys that I think Auburn would pivot to in this class. I think the guys they would pivot to don't start for Auburn in 2025. Juju Lewis, I think, would have a chance to start in 2025. But they like their young guys. They beat out Clemson for Walker White. He was the quarterback for Auburn in their top 10 class that they just signed a few months ago. And then the class before that, Hank Brown, who was a 3-star kid who was committed to Liberty when Hugh Freeze then took the job at Auburn. Hank followed him over to Auburn, and I think he's exceeded expectation. He's a friend of Locked On Auburn. I've got an NIL deal going with Hank, so I'm a little biased here, but I think Auburn would be fine. But none of those guys aren't Juju Lewis. They're not. Juju Lewis changes your program. I mean, he's a special player. Can Auburn win without Juju? Sure, but I do think winning with Juju would make things a little bit easier. No question about it.
I think for Deion Sanders, it means, and I'm not saying it doesn't mean a lot to Auburn, but it means a little more. He's shown that he could get a 5-star at a skill position like wide receiver, corner. Like, he's shown that. He got an offensive tackle last year, which was a big deal. But has he ever landed a blue chip quarterback that isn't his son? And even his son was kind of a borderline 3-star, borderline 4-star kind of kid. So it's like, can he get those big name quarterbacks? And so landing Julian Lewis, one, it kind of silences those critics. Two, Julian Lewis has what the kids call clout. And so when you get a Julian Lewis, you get his friends, you get his teammates from Carleton, you get guys from USC who maybe are thinking about reopening their recruitment. And it just opens up more doors for Colorado. And it kind of seems, at least the past few weeks, that Colorado's been making a bigger push on the recruiting trail. And what bigger way to make a push than landing Julian Lewis? So If you were to sort of give a confidence level, like say USC, Colorado, and Auburn, where those are the 3 schools that are in the mix. If you could give a confidence level for Auburn, what would you give? 1 to 10?
6.
6? Okay. So a little bit above average, but not like we got this guy. What do you think is like the thing holding you back? Would it say the recent decommitments and movement there?
Yeah, I mean, I think USC is the favorite still to win. I think it's USC. If I had to rank them, I would say USC, Auburn, Colorado. You may say a different order, and what we talked about earlier in the week.
Yeah.
In regards to, some national media folks are saying that it's Auburn or Colorado, then USC's behind them. What's happened this week makes me not buy that. I mean, Borba, I can't get over the visual of, and you said this, these kids know what they're doing. They're happy to troll in a heartbeat, and I'm for it. Let them do it. Let them milk this. This is a really cool process for them. They don't get to do it too often. But when Arnaud committed his teammate at Carrollton to USC, Juju's the one who threw him the gloves. And I just think that means something. I think there's some excitement. They're kind of in this together. Let's all get my buddies and go to USC. This is what it feels like. This is what it feels like to me. And until something changes, and it could, whether it's NIL, whether it's, just the some big visit that kind of knocks him off of his feet. His father is certainly very involved in this process, TC Lewis. You just never know what could kind of knock things over and change things. But to me right now, it's USC, Auburn, and Colorado in that order. And I do think the gap between all 3 schools is pretty small.
Yeah, I would say I would probably go USC just because he's committed there. If he didn't want to be there, he wouldn't be there, which is kind of like the point that I think I want a lot of people to realize. And there's also, I forgot who made the point, so I'm not going to take credit for this take, but someone did say that USC at one point only had Julian Lewis committed. Like there was a time where he was their lone commit. They weren't landing a lot of people. Obviously, they started to build some momentum around him, but he has kind of been there through thick and thin in this class. And so why would he leave now if he doesn't plan on leaving? So I thought that was interesting. In terms of reading into a lot of things, I thought the picture between him and Shedeur Sanders with Shedeur handing him the keys, I thought that was really interesting. I don't feel like that's an idea that someone floats out there unless they feel like they have him. So I'd probably go USC, and then Colorado and Auburn would be my 2A, 2B type of vibe. And I think on any day, however the wind blows, it could be Colorado 2, Auburn 3. So until, December, until pen is put to paper, I'm not counting out anyone because realistically, you can't. We've learned that through the years.
I do think, obviously that's true, and somebody's going to be able to make a push in late or early December, or at least try to. But I do think there's going to be a moment. Either it's going to be if or when he flips, or he's going to say, "I'm locking it down. USC is going to be my school." I do think there will be a moment where Juju, at least publicly, shuts it down. I do think that will happen, and my guess is it'll happen before his senior year starts at Carrollton. And so, because if you're that good, this is why it's so important. And you talked about this with Deion trying to get that major recruit, that major quarterback. Obviously, Juju is talented, and whatever NIL packages or promises you give to him or his family or whatever, it's worth it just for the player. But for folks who say no, it's not worth it. One, it's not your money, but two is you get so much more than that. Just you talk about the marketing and the messaging for your athletic department and your football program. If he goes to USC, if he goes to Colorado, if he goes to Auburn, it's huge. And also guys are going to want to play for him. So you're not just getting him. It may allow you to get a discount for some other big time players, or at least it allows you to host guys on a visit that maybe wouldn't even have considered you 5 minutes prior to you landing Julian Lewis. So it's a big deal because he is so good and so talented, but it's bigger than that. I mean, it impacts your whole class. It changes your program. It changes how your program is viewed, whoever lands Juju.
Great way to put it. Honestly, there's nothing to add there. He's an elite quarterback, and elite quarterbacks, they make major changes. When we come back, we're going to be talking about a little trade-off between Auburn and Colorado.
Ooh.
This episode of Locked on Buffs is brought to you by sponsors over at Game Time. They have all of the deals. Every deal you can imagine. They have killer last-minute deals where you could save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever it may be. They also have this great feature where you could see your seat. So there should be no random pole sitting in front of you. There should be no random blockade where you can't see the field. And Game Time is the authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, and which makes getting tickets faster and easier as the price is on Game Time, where they actually go down as it gets closer to first pitch. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Joining me again, Zac Blackerby from Locked on Auburn. We talked about Julian Lewis, all the implications it has. Let's talk about the guys that we both know we have. Colorado and Auburn had a little trade-off. And so Auburn just recently took in Jahquez Robinson, the former Alabama transfer that ended up in Boulder, following Charles Kelly. And then obviously Colorado got the Hood family because they got Colton and they got his younger brother. So Zac, talk to me about Colton Hood. Obviously not the most experienced guy. He only had a few tackles, if I'm remembering stat line correctly. Talk to me what Colorado's getting in him.
Well, he was an exciting addition. He's a guy that committed to Freeze shortly after he took the job, and it was a little bit after that early signing day. But really, really exciting player. He's got a ton of athleticism. It's just a situation where his path to playing time wasn't super clear. Auburn wanted him. Auburn wanted to keep Colton Hood because he is talented, but he probably would have had to sit for a year or two before he really even got into the rotation. There was some talk of possibly him cracking that rotation, but I think with some additions that Auburn made this offseason and some other guys in his class kind of taking a step forward, it probably would have been about a year until he was really solidly into that rotation. So there were rumors that he may leave because he wanted to play with his brother, like you said. And there was even some talk and some folks that I talked to is like, would Auburn consider getting his brother? Obviously, they both entered the portal and they both chose Colorado. I think it's a solid play. I don't know if he's ready this year just because we haven't seen enough of him to really know that. But as far as upside, as far as ability, as far as making your roster better, I think Colton Hood's a good player.
Yeah, and I think for Colorado, which their secondary is really interesting this year, they upgraded in a major way. Hunter's there, so that's a plus. But they go out, get a guy in Preston Hodge from Liberty, and then they go out and get a guy from Oklahoma State and DJ McKinney. So they have three bona fide guys who have started wherever they've been. Mm-hmm. They need depth. We hate it, but it's a part of football. Injuries happen. Travis Hunter obviously plays both ways, so he may need to come off the field every once in a while. So realistically, when Colorado gets a guy like Colton Hood, he's not coming in to start right away. But unlike at Auburn, where Zac mentioned he's fighting for just to crack the rotation, at Colorado, he has a realistic chance to crack that rotation. His brother's on campus, which brings in some familiarity. So yeah. I think that's an overall good move for Colorado. I think when you compare this portal class to last year's, last year they took a flyer on anyone. If you were breathing and wanted to play football at Colorado, you were in black and gold. This year, it's like, okay, we have guys who have played, and then we have guys who haven't played but have extra years of eligibility, and we are going to take a flyer on them. So I think that's kind of the ultimate motive with Colton Hood. Zac, you guys just got Jahquez Robinson. Can you tell me about, one, are you guys happy with the Charles Kelly sort of exchange that you got? Because I feel like Charles Kelly, Colorado fans, I don't think they appreciated him enough because it didn't work out in the sense that they were hoping.
Yeah. Sorry about that. My internet just went crazy if that looked funny. Yeah, I mean, I think Colton Hood, we saw kind of what he was in the bowl game. Auburn had two corners drafted in this past year's draft. They sat out of the bowl game, and so a lot of these younger guys got to play. Colton Hood played 50 snaps last season. 35 of those snaps were in the bowl game. And you saw them, the defensive backs, there was a bunch of young guys that hadn't played, and they struggled early. And then in the second half, when they kind of got their feet set and it seemed like the game slowed down for him, so that's encouraging. He pretty much played all of his defensive snaps at wide corner. And so, is that something that could, allow Travis Hunter to get a breather or something? That would make sense. So yeah, I mean, once again, I think Colton Hood's a good player. I don't think Auburn wanted to lose him, and that's usually pretty telling. Like if you don't want the player to leave and you land him, like that's usually a good sign.
Yeah, I think too often we get caught up in like stats where it's like, oh, he only played, like you said, 55 snaps. And it's like, okay, but he's raw. He has 3 or 4 years left of eligibility. The COVID year still throws me off. I have no idea where we're at with that. I think
I don't think he's impacted by that. So
okay. I
yeah,
think
we
this
should
is like
be.
the final year of COVID, guys. So I'm excited to be at a point where it's just like this guy has 4 years of eligibility. This guy has 3 years. I'm gonna be grateful for that point. So let's talk about the 2 Colorado guys that are now in Auburn. One of them being Charles Kelly. I talked about him a little bit. He was a Nick Saban disciple. Comes to Colorado as a defensive coordinator. I met him, interviewed him. He's just a very Southern fellow that loves college football. And I thought that'd be a great fit. He's kind of a very calm guy. And his unit struggled. And I think it was everyone was to blame. I think there was a lot of coaching issues where they weren't prepared for substitutions. They had a lot of illegal substitution penalties. I'd never seen so many. The players themselves were not good enough. And so I think it's hard to make a cake when you're not given the proper ingredients to make a cake. So Zach, Auburn fans, are they happy to get the return of Charles Kelly? Because obviously he's a former Auburn guy. Are they a little wary about his past season?
I think it's huge. I think his role is going to be different at Auburn than it was at Colorado. He's co-defensive coordinator. They went out and got DJ Durkin, who I think is going to essentially be the defensive coordinator. I imagine Charles Kelly to be very involved in recruiting, and I think he'll coach defensive backs, and I think he'll do a good job there. But I think he's going to be asked to do kind of a different set of tasks. But yeah, kind of an interesting thing. Like he was seen around the complex, and there were some reports of or whispers that, he was leaving Colorado to come to Auburn. And then it sounds like the Colorado side of it leaked it to the national media. And then Auburn wasn't ready for that news to come out yet. So that was kind of an interesting thing. So maybe there is a little bit of bad blood between these two programs. Who knows?
Yeah, I think and it's weird that there's bad blood because I think Colorado fans need to realize just they didn't have the roster yet in 2023. And so I think Charles Kelly probably got a lot of unfair blame where it's like, this defense wasn't great, dude. What the heck? And he's probably like, what do you want me to do? And so you can only do so much with the guys that you're given. And I think Deion Sanders, what we've learned about from his very brief coaching tenure is if he does not see something up to his quote unquote standard, he will make a change. He literally demoted his offensive coordinator, who was a former head coach that took that job middle of the season just because he did not like where things were going. So I think he felt like the defense maybe wasn't going in the direction he had hoped. So he was like, you know what? We'll try something new. Charles Kelly got to return to his alma mater, so that worked out. So very interesting trade-off. And you guys also, outside of the draft picks, no, just kidding. You guys got Jahquez Robinson, who didn't really see a lot of the run for Colorado. He filled in for Travis Hunter, was kind of a corner safety tweener guy. He follows Charles Kelly to Auburn. Are you guys thrilled with that? What is his role there? Because obviously he didn't have the biggest role at Colorado.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point of the offseason, you got to kind of look at each edition with context. I think it matters. I don't think Robinson's expected to be a huge role. It's probably similar to what it was expected for Colton Hood. But Auburn had an injury from one of their younger guys, and I think this is just kind of like, hey, we need a body. This is a guy who's played for Charles Kelly before. They probably, he's probably very familiar with what's expected of him or the system. So to me, I think the context makes sense. It's just if you're not expecting him to be like a starter and just to kind of help raise the floor of your team or maybe help practices run smoother or something and provide depth, I think it makes sense. Sense. It's not every addition is going to blow you away, but this one does make sense, I think, when you look at everything.
Yeah, I think we often get caught up in this guy's going to be a star every time. And it's like, not everybody's going to be a star, and that's okay. But Colorado and Auburn both won, I would say, their respective trade-off. They both got depth. Auburn got a coach out of it. So not too shabby. So, Zach, I appreciate you for coming on, talking about the Julian Lewis war. I'm sure we're not done with it. So I'm sure we'll be back. Think of this as the House of the Dragon. Whatever family you guys rock with, that's whoever will be on this show. But Zach, tell the people what you're working on, where they can find you, and all your coverage.
Yeah, if you're with the Auburn side of the Juju Lewis saga, be sure to check out Locked on Auburn. Much like you watch or follow this show, it's available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
Appreciate you for hopping on. When we come back, we are going to be talking about Colorado's latest edition and, of course, the EA Sports drama. Welcome back to Locked on Buffs. I appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast. I want to thank Zach for hopping on as well to talk about the Julian Lewis saga, the Auburn trade-off. Never really thought that me and him would have a reason to cross over, but hey, we had one, so it was awesome. Let's talk about Colorado's latest edition. Also, let me update my background here. Boom. Oh, just kidding. Not yet. Here we go. Attempt number 2. Background updated. Now we are good to go. Okay, Colorado, they've made another offensive line addition in the recruiting class, and he is a absolute monster of a human, 6'8", 350 pounds, ranked as 145th offensive tackle in the country, 45th player in the state of Michigan. His name is Jay Gardenhire, I believe is how you say, from West Bloomfield, Michigan, which is where Brandon Davis Swain was from. So obviously, Colorado has somewhat of a tie there. What does he bring to the table? He's currently out of Colorado's 5 commits, their lowest ranked commit, which doesn't mean anything bad. He offers some future depth, and he offers someone that could be a potential starter down the road if he develops under Phil Loadholt, which you have to give Phil Loadholt props where props is due, because he came in and he's recruiting at a level that I think most people weren't expecting from Colorado, weren't expecting from Deion Sanders and his sort of, I guess, his mantra of living and dying by the transfer portal. I think a lot of people were expecting him to continue to do so. And so Phil Loadholt has come in and he's made an impact. So nice little addition there. Let's talk about EA Sports' college football offensive power and defensive power rankings. So they released their rankings for not every, I'm sure every ranking, every unit has been ranked, but they did the top 25. So here's the offense. And as you can imagine, it's the usual suspects at the top. It's Georgia, it's Oregon, it's Alabama, it's Texas, Ohio State, LSU, Miami, Colorado at 8. And it is, at least it was when I started recording, the number one topic on the app formerly known as Twitter, because people are outraged. Colorado was given an 89 overall, which is tied with Ohio State, LSU, Miami, Missouri, above programs like Clemson, Utah, Penn State, and Ole Miss. And so why are people pissed? Well, one, I think people don't realize how much of an upgrade this roster is. You go out and you bring in a 5-star left tackle. You go out and you bring in 2 offensive guards who are going to start. You have Hank Zelinkas, who center, I don't think a lot of people expected him to start because they brought in a transfer, but I think he's going to start. And then you bring in a Big Ten right tackle in Khalil Benson. Colorado has a much better offensive line. Their running back room, much improved. And I think where a lot of the rating is coming from is obviously Shedeur Sanders. I expect him to be around a 95. I feel like would be fair. 94. I don't think if there's going to be a 99 on this game, I think it's going to be Travis Hunter, realistically, just because he's so dynamic. And I think that's another reason that this unit is ranked so highly, plus the receivers in general. You have LeJonte Webster, who's probably going to be a 92 or at worst like an 88, 89. You have guys like a Jimmy Horn, who's probably going to be an 85 or above. And so this wide receiver room's elite, quarterback's elite. And so I don't know why people are so upset. Now, the rating that did interest me was the defensive power rankings. So again, it's Ohio State, it's Georgia, it's Oregon, Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame, Michigan, Texas, Penn State, Utah round out the top 10. Colorado was at number 20. And it's like, oh, is the defense going to be that much better? And so it's like, okay, again, you got Travis Hunter, you got Nikhai Hill-Green, the linebacker from Charlotte and Michigan that played a lot of ball. You have Preston Hodge, you have DJ McKinney. All of a sudden, you're like, oh, the secondary is pretty solid. The defensive line is much improved. Chidozie, you have Quincy Wiggins, you have Anquin Barnes, and like the linebacker group isn't the best, but Levante Bentley's solid. So a lot of people, I think the anger that people are showing about these EA Sports ratings just show that I don't think they're realizing how much of an upgrade Colorado had or how much of an upgrade Colorado made in the transfer portal. This isn't last year's transfer portal class, whereas everyone with a pulse is in the class. This is a portal class that added starters, that added dudes who have played and played well. Like, I don't think people are realizing that. And I think that's kind of going to be a surprise for most people when Colorado goes out there next year and wins 6 to 8 games and makes a bowl game. So I'm not surprised. I know a lot of people are. The defense surprised me a little bit, but I guess they did improve where they needed to improve. So if you're a Colorado fan, comment below. Who do you think, outside of Shedeur and Travis, obviously, is going to have the highest rating on the team? Do you agree with the ratings? You guys let me know in the comments. I appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. I hope to see you guys tomorrow. This has been Locked on Buffs.